Welcome to Geocache Adventures with me, Shadow Dragon 1, where I explore the world of geocaching. If you like the podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or the Geocache Adventures Facebook page. Or share it with somebody that you think would enjoy it. Word of mouth is a great way to spread the podcast. You can also join Geocache Adventures on Buy Me a Coffee. Just follow Geo Adventures, that's one word, GEO Adventures on Buy Me a Coffee, and get behind the scenes on every episode or become a member to unlock other exclusive content. Hi everybody, Amy Shadow Dragon 1 here, and with me today is Brad Simmons, spokesman for GeoWoodstock Planning Committee. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk today about GeoWoodstock, but before we get started, how did you get started geocaching?
I started 20 years ago, day after tomorrow. It's April 1st,
Oh, wow.
April Fool's Day. One of my best buddies and I used to travel a bunch for entertainment, and he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I have got the thing to do on that third weekend in Cleveland," which we used to joke about, like, because it's not just Cleveland, it's anywhere, but the first time you go to a town, you hit all the tourist spots. Second time you're there, you pick up the things that you learned about on that first weekend. Third weekend, we would find ourselves just hanging out at the hotel or hanging out at the venue because we've done all the things in that town.
Okay.
And geocaching was a great way for us to get out and discover the parks, discover not just like the hidden treasures that the Chamber of Commerce was telling you about, but the stuff that the people who lived there wanted to show off. So this was my third weekend in Cleveland thing. I figured I would do it for a few weeks and be over it. And it'll be 20 years this week.
Are you over it yet?
Not quite.
Maybe a few more weeks.
Yeah, we'll do another month or two, see how things go.
There you go. How did you get involved with GeoWoodstock?
That I had the great fortune of being friends with the GeoWoodstock's godfather, Joe GPS, Joe Armstrong.
Okay.
Joe lived about 20 miles north of us. And before we met him, we're just absolutely fascinated with his caches. He did amazing, amazing things. There are all kinds of things that now are just ubiquitous, like those bolts that you find that have been drilled out.
Yeah.
You can order those on stores now. Joe created and hid the very first one of those back in 2002, 2003.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was just amazing stuff. Anytime that Joe, like, I've never chased first to finds much, but I always would chase Joe's caches because you wanted to see them in the wild before anybody else had messed with them. You see it as he had hidden it. A super creative guy and a dear friend. And then because we were hanging out together and caching together quite a bit, we ended up working with him a little bit when he decided to put together GeoWoodstock.
Okay. So for anybody that may be listening that's newer to geocaching, what is GeoWoodstock?
GeoWoodstock is the original geocaching mega event. That it was started as supposed to be a tiny event. Joe really put it together just to meet a few new people. They had about 75 people turn up in Louisville, Kentucky in 2003. I helped him with some of the preliminary stuff, but my wife and I actually skipped it because we were on our honeymoon.
Oh.
And Joe said not to worry because when he started putting it together, I was like, "Did we need to reschedule?" Whatever. He's like, "No, it's not going to be that big a deal. Just you guys go have fun." So we missed the first one, but we've been to all of them since. But he envisioned it as a way for, at that time, the top finders in the game to get together and meet each other. This is 2003. At that time, the geocaching forums were really active.
Okay.
And there were all these people that you kept seeing the names online. And for the folks who were traveling quite a bit to find several caches, you would see those names in logbooks and things. And Joe just wanted a way to put those names to faces. And this is 2003, so I want to say there were 10 or 12 people who had found 1,000 geocaches at that time. I mean, 1,000 was just an unimaginable number. Yeah, it was insane. So Joe started looking around, and there were several people in the Louisville area. There were 3 here in the Nashville area. There was one guy in St. Louis. There was some folks in Pennsylvania, someone in Minnesota, and started looking at where is the best place for us all to get together. And Louisville, Kentucky was chosen as a spot. And then one of the guys who was helping organize things, show me the cache, suggested the name GeoWoodstock because it would be like the Woodstock Music Festival, that you would get all the top people in the game at the time to come together for one big festival. So it was really just a chance for everybody to get together. And that's why it was used to be referred to as in GeoWoodstock where it's all about the numbers, because there was a culture at the time, like, there were people who just cached for numbers and there were people who cached for quality, which was kind of crazy because the people who were caching for numbers loved high quality stuff. They just did it more than other people.
Okay. Okay. I think we can all appreciate a high quality cache, whether we like the power trails or just occasional caching.
Well, that's part of the fun thing about it, because we're talking about a time when power trails didn't exist.
Yeah.
At those days when Joe and Bob, Joe's brother Southpaw, were first caching there, they both had over 1,000 caches at this event. But their first 100 caches, they hit the ground hard. They were running all the time, but it took them like 6 or 7 months and 7 states to find their first 100 caches. Yeah, it wasn't a month. It was I think it was like 4 months and 7 states. It was a
Wow.
very different game where nearly every cache was a walk in a park, a walk in the woods, almost exclusively full size caches, just not a lot of micros out yet.
Wow. So this first GeoWoodstock happens. What made them decide to keep doing it?
Well, it was a good party. It was nice to get a chance to meet everybody. At the first one, they met under the bridge there, right on the waterfront there in Louisville. They didn't provide any meals or anything really. Joe told everybody to like stop and grab a Happy Meal so they would have some toys to swap out in the caches later on in the day. And they had about 70, 75 people show up and just spend the afternoon sitting around talking and getting to know each other. And of course, that begins building a larger community and tying these communities together. Because prior to that, we have local groups, and the Middle Tennessee Geocachers Club exists, but they're not talking to the folks at Indiana and Kentucky Inky. So now Inky and
Right.
NPGC are talking to each other, and the Slogger group, and now they're all start talking to each other. A Georgia Geocaching Association comes in, and as people get to meet more folks, Joe looked at it and saw that this was a really good thing to get to where these communities were coming together, and he decided, you know what, next year let's all meet in Nashville. So we had GeoWoodstock 2 in Nashville. And that was such a good party. I think we had around 200 people show up for that one.
Oh.
That was so much fun that a couple of guys suggested, hey, could we host this thing next year? Let's do it in Jacksonville. So we moved it to Jacksonville the next year. And, it's like that. It's like starts snowballing downhill. And then for the fourth iteration, it was just south of Dallas, Texas. And Joe was a reviewer at the time, one of the early reviewers. He was speaking to the folks at Groundspeak, and they were talking about the difference between like these, the regular events we do,
Right.
and these big regional events. So he helped, with the help of Geocaching HQ, they all came together and came up with the idea of a mega event that would have at least 500 people attend. So GeoWoodstock GeoWoodstock 4 in Texas becomes the world's first mega event.
So it only took a couple years for it to hit that large.
Absolutely, but it was kind of a big deal, as they say.
Oh yeah. I mean, getting 200 something together in the second year, seems like 75 people in one area is a good size event for anything.
That was a
really
huge event in 2003.
Yeah. So and then to get 200 plus people together, that's a big deal.
It was a huge deal, and he worked really hard to promote it. But at the time, also, like I said, the forums were way more popular. Like kind of when you started geocaching, I would say that at least 40%, maybe even as high as 60% of the people caching at that time also visited the forums regularly. So you had a larger online community that wasn't nearly as splintered as things are now. So there was a good place there that you could go onto the geocaching forums and advertise, hey, we're going to do this big event. And it very much, he was a great marketer and a great showman. And he was very good at making sure that people knew, hey, we're going to do this thing. It's going to be a good time. You don't want to miss it. And it was a good opportunity at the time. Whenever we had the one in Jacksonville, that was the first time that some folks from geocaching headquarters came and attended the event. So you got to meet Nate, Jeremy's brother came in, and you got to meet those folks. We had a contingency of folks from Germany that came that year.
Wow.
And things started snowballing. And at the time, there weren't a lot of other big events going on that weren't specific to a region. I mean, that's the thing that I've always thought is really special about GeoWoodstock. And the way that it moves around, that we're not tied to one region, at this point, we're an international event after being in Canada last year. But we've traveled over most of the country, and you get different groups hosting every year and you get a different feel. And I absolutely adore a bunch of the other mega events and giga events around the world, and am involved in a couple of them. And like, I love going to Midwest GeoBash because I know what to expect when I get to Bash. I know where it's going to be. I know who's going to be handling things. I know what to expect at the event. The same thing with going caching in Rome, Georgia. I know where it's going to be, and you never know what to expect from them because they are so incredibly creative. But you have this consistent team that's putting things together every year.
Right.
It's with those, I love that. I love that, what we're getting there. They're these places I'm going to get to visit year after year. But with GeoWoodstock, I get to go to a different part of the country and I get to see what a whole new group is going to do to show off their geocaching area, to show off their incredible, the natural beauty around the town, to show off their restaurants, the bars, all of the different things that make their community what it is. And that to me is super exciting every year.
How does the committee, first of all, how many are on the committee?
Oh, great question. One I should know the answer to. Well, there is a representative from every prior GeoWoodstock.
Okay.
So we should be at 19 right now.
Wow.
But I think we're at 17. We've had a couple that passed away, and we've had a couple of events. Like, the event has gone back so far that folks have either dropped out of the game or, in one case, literally everyone who was on the committee has passed away.
Wow.
And it doesn't really make sense to just invite someone from that community to represent an event that they weren't a part of.
Right.
Yeah, I should have looked that up before we started. But yeah, that's for the most part, we have everything is represented by, and everyone who has a vote on the committee is someone who has previously been part of a committee that hosted a GeoWoodstock.
Wow. So this committee, how do you all choose the next location?
We put out a call for proposals.
Okay.
GeoWoodstock.org has a whole section about how to host the event, like what sort of things you need to bring to the table. But it's like a straightforward process, because I don't want you to answer a bunch of questions. As a committee, we don't want you just like to make a checklist. We want to see your creativity. We want to see what it is so it's pretty freeform when it comes to the proposal. But the basics, we want you to have been to a GeoWoodstock before, so you sort of know what to expect. Need to have a committee that is committed to doing a good job, and folks who are reputable, that who've been in the community for a while. It's always good to have some community leaders on the board. Then we really want to look at, like, what do you have in your area that you want to showcase? Tell me why your place is special. Tell me why the geocaching in your area is special. Tell me what you've got to do for the rest of the family who may be traveling with a geocacher who isn't there to geocache.
Right.
It's kind of the whole thing. There's no set criteria, but what we want to do is we'll go through those things and we'll look at it. And it's like, there's great geocaching in this area, but they don't have a great venue that can hold the sort of crowds we're expecting. This is a great venue, but there aren't a lot of caches in the area. This is a beautiful spot, but the folks who are doing this have not done large events before. So GeoWoodstock is daunting to host at this point. We started with 75 people. We've had over 5,000 people. So it really depends on what kind of event you want to hold. It's generally been a mega event since it's became the first mega event at GeoWoodstock 4. We've had 2 giga events. 18 and 19 were both giga events. 17 and 18 were both, 16 and 18 were both giga events. I'll get it right eventually. One of those things I really should know, that GeoWoodstock 16 in Cincinnati was the first US giga event. And then we followed that up with the first Canadian giga event in GeoWoodstock 18.
Wow.
Yeah, but there's a lot that goes into it, because it's not just putting together folks in a field like it was when Joe put together the first couple. Now you've got to make sure that you have a place that can handle somewhere between, let's say, 1,000 and 3,500 people.
Yeah.
You've got to have parking for that. You have to have bathrooms. You have to make sure you have the police out there to direct traffic and all those things. There are a lot of logistical things that I don't think people realize now go into it. Little things like trying to figure out how many porta potties do we need to add to this park in order to be able to host things there. And then you have to have stuff for people to do during the day. So that's a big part of the proposal as well. We're looking like, are they going to do classes, what kind of presentations are they going to have from the stage? Those things aren't required. You can do an entire event with no presentations. I've always said that if I ever were to host the event again, that I would host just the most basic GeoWoodstock that you could have. It would go back to like we did with the first one. It might not even be a mega event. That we would just go back to, let's get a bunch of folks together and talk, because that is really, with all of the other crazy things that are happening, GeoWoodstock at its core is about bringing an international community together to talk about and to have fellowship over a game we all love. Because if you don't love geocaching, you're not showing up at GeoWoodstock. It's an expense. You have to travel. There are things there. We tend to spend at least a week in the area when we're out there with geocaching, but way more important to me than finding a handful of caches in a new area is seeing the people that I have been attending this party with for the last 20 years. And it is really great. I mean, there are folks that I see 2 or 3 times a year, and I see them at the big mega events, and there are folks that I only see at GeoWoodstock. And I absolutely look forward to that. I used to feel like I got it wrong because I would go to the area and I would just like cache like crazy. And I would be at the event for a few hours, an hour or two, and go pick up my packet and I'm out caching. Not anymore. I am there first thing in the morning and I'm there all day long, just walking around. I've had GeoWoodstocks lately that if there weren't a cache like right on the grounds, I wouldn't find anything, because I'm way more interested in seeing the people who are visiting than going out and signing a few more logs that day.
That's awesome. Now, I know, so I have been to Moga previously, and from talking to other geocachers at that event and just other geocachers from their experiences, megas draw people in early and will show up like a week early to cache the area and do the different side events. How do the side events happen? Or is it just random geocachers in the area say, hey, we want to host a side event? Or do you reach out to the community, or how does that happen?
Generally with GeoWoodstock, of course, and one of the things that's important to remember about GeoWoodstock is even though I'm on the organizing committee and I help to choose where it is, we try to be as hands-off as we can about the actual event. Of course, we're always here, happy to consult, happy to work. I've shown up early and helped pack packets together for folks. We will do anything you need with GeoWoodstock. We want to be there. We want to be helpful. But the one thing that I don't want to do is put my thumbs on the scale and change your event. I want the host committee to have the freedom to do the things they want to do. And I have had times where I look at one coming up and like, oh, wow, I don't see how they're going to pull this off. This is going to crash and burn. I'm just so worried. And then I get there and they have done everything, and it's been amazing. And that is, I've always said, like, when people get concerned sometimes, they're like, having the freedom to fail allows people to succeed. So we try very hard to not take too much of a role in each individual event. That said, always happy to help out. So, sometimes our hosts like to reach out to the community and have different people host the lead-up events. I think this year that they're pretty much handling the stuff in-house, that Owensboro is doing. Their Convention Visitors Bureau is putting things together, and they have a great series of events starting, I believe, on Monday of that week. It's going to be, they have something big every single day. I was looking at my travel schedule and trying to figure out how I'm going to have to shift my travel schedule to not miss some of the things that they are doing. But it really does come down to each separate committee figuring out how to do things. And I am, once again, constantly amazed at what folks will come up with for people to do on a random Wednesday night. We've had closed down the street block parties. We've had things at smaller venues. We've had concerts. It's been all over the board. We've learned some valuable lessons. Back when things first started really growing, we didn't realize how important it was for the hosts of the mega event to have some control over the events that happened around their event. So we had events that would have been fine for a usual week. We're going to have a thing here at a bar. They had a cacher came in to one of our GeoWoodstocks. They decided to put together an event at a bar. That's normally no problem. 30, 40 people, no big deal. Had over 600 people show up at the bar that night.
Oh, wow.
That was, nobody expected that. With the GeoWoodstock that we hosted, I hosted GeoWoodstock 7 in Belbuckle, Tennessee. there was a satellite event that someone that we didn't know at the time put together about coins at a different hotel, and they had done everything right. They just didn't realize that they were going to have 1,000 people show up at the hotel, and the fire marshal was going to come in and close down the conference room that they had rented.
Oh,
And if
wow.
there wasn't sufficient parking at the hotel and that sort of thing, because you just can't plan for those sort of things if you're not in the middle. So
It just overwhelms the places.
it absolutely does. And one of the good things now is that when you host a mega event, Geocaching HQ works with the host on the lead up days to make sure that there is kind of put a halo around the event to make sure that
Okay.
any events that get published during that week are inside the halo, that the hosts are aware of them and that they agree with them and things. So you don't have folks put together
Oh.
a donut meet and greet at the local donut shop and it's 7 in the morning and have 200 people show up for donuts. Um, it just it's one of those things that to
Okay.
help protect mega events in general, and it's happened. It's protection for all the different mega events to make sure that you don't like get a bad reputation because somebody's car got towed because there wasn't parking for the event that the host had nothing to do with. It's another one
Okay.
of those like weird considerations that you don't think about until you get into that situation and realize like, wow, what's
Yeah, I don't think I would have thought of that, but it makes perfect sense when you say it. Like if
we
you're
didn't
just
think of
gonna
it the first time.
completely overwhelm an establishment and just, overwhelm the locals and everything and just make it bad for everybody if you're not careful with that.
And because generally the place that I have places that I host events on a regular basis, and I can handle 60 or 70 people there, no problem. And
Yeah.
I go and let them know I need the back room. It's going to be, I'll probably have 30, 40 people show up. Well, on a week when you've got a couple of thousand cashers in your town, if there's an event up, even if you only get 10% of them showing up, you've got 100 people now.
Yeah.
If you get 25% of them showing up, now we've got 250 people there, and that's assuming there are only 1,000 people in town that night. And when you look at these where we can have 5,000 people show up, what happens now if 10% of them decide to swing by the donut shop
You're gonna run out of donuts real quick.
real quick? It's good for business, but it's bad for the event overall.
Yeah. So that makes sense. HQ would work around the committee and the event to kind of help control what's happening there.
That's with all of the mega events in the U.S. that all the mega event organizers work closely with HQ to make sure that we're all working to make sure that we're doing good things for the sport. That we don't have any black eyes on the sport. We want to make sure that when we bring this community together, whether it's GeoWoodstock or one of the other wonderful megas out there, we want to make sure that we're promoting the sport and doing the best thing for the community.
Right, because it only takes one bad experience to ruin it for everybody.
I said the bad news is what makes the news. Everybody getting
Right.
together and having a wonderful day, that's not news. And having a wonderful day is what we always try to do and what we've been able to do so far.
So with Geo Woodstock, it seems like most, I don't know about all, but the ones I'm familiar with, the mega events I'm familiar with, they kind of have just that sort of same formula every time.
Mhm,
Moga's big on the competitions. That's their big
mhm.
draw. You got Geo Coin Fest. It's all about the Geo coins and the trackables and stuff. But from what you've said, it sounds like Geo Woodstock, they've they've got a lot of they can have a lot of variation in the formula depending on what the host decide.
Absolutely, and that's what keeps Geo Woodstock near and dear to my heart. That we get to see something new, and to me, it's almost like the core of geocaching. Because what drew me to geocaching in the first place is having to wander into a random city that I've never been to before, and suddenly discovering this wonderful little waterfall in a local park. That's not on. There's no Yelp review for that thing. There's no like
Yeah.
easy way to get it. The reason that I've discovered it is because someone who lives there who cares about that waterfall hit a geocache to show me their wonderful spot, to show me their secret spot. And I love that. I've always said like that is the hidden treasure, the true treasure of this game. They're the locations that you get to visit and the people that you meet along the way. Well, Geo Woodstock really focuses in on that. It is all about the people that you meet while you're there And the format that we use, having local hosts choose and not being limited to what our view of GeoWoodstock is, but being able to bring their own view and their own scope to it, that really puts us in a position where they're showing us their area, they're showcasing things, they're saying these are the treasures that we have to share with the world. And I love that. And don't get me wrong, I'm at Midwest GeoBash every year. I'm always happy to help out up there, and I adore that event. One of the things I love about it is I don't have to do very much work. I'm at Going Caching in Rome, Georgia every year, and I absolutely adore that event. That I try to get away. I've been to Moga several times. Always enjoy going to Moga. I don't compete at Moga. I just enjoy getting there and getting to see the people that I haven't seen in a while.
Right.
I've been doing the caches around the area. But that, and then and there are several others. Don't want to leave anybody out. Love the Project Giga and in Europe. Those are always fun. That it's, but like you said, they all sort of have a formula. They have a thing that works for them, and I love the fact that I know what to expect when I get to Washington, Ohio for Midwest GeoBash. I down to where I'm almost in a rut. Like I know where I'm going to have dinner on Friday night. I know the things I'm going to do, and I absolutely love that. I love going caching in Rome because I don't know what's going to happen because they do such an incredible job of keeping us all on our toes. I mean, I'm part of the crew that helps put that event together now, and I still am constantly surprised and amazed at the creativity down there and just what they have in store for us. But that is the same thing with GeoWoodstock. I love going into town and not knowing what's in there, and I try to stay out of the planning as best I can so I can be surprised as well.
Okay.
And that is really, I think that to me that is the biggest strength of GeoWoodstock is that we have a huge diversity of experience because we have a super diverse team that puts it together. It's not the same crew every time. We're getting new ideas. Some of the ideas are wonderful, some of them aren't. That's life. But I would rather have something that didn't quite make it, that was new and exciting and vibrant, than doing the same thing year after year. So, yeah, I'm very proud of what our hosts have been able to do for us.
Well, I am hopefully life doesn't get in the way of me. Hopefully, I plan on being at GeoWoodstock this year. So I'm excited. And my husband asked me what we're going to do at GeoWoodstock. And I said, I have no clue. And after this interview, I can tell him I still have no clue, but it's going to be a good time. So,
Oh, well, take a look at what they're doing. Go to geowoodstock.com and you'll see what they've got going on for this year. That's kind of a big overview. They've got something on the schedule every night. Owensboro, Kentucky is an amazing town. Mogo was there a few years ago.
yes, it was.
And they have this great riverfront area that's super vibrant. Hotels are all right there. The convention center is right there on the water. They have a national award-winning children's playground. It's like a middle of this thing. There are fountains all along the way. They've got a bridge there that I don't know what they're doing this year. When they had Moga there, they had the bridge lit up with a code that you had to use to solve one of the puzzles for Moga.
Oh,
So
wow.
like the city is all in on it. They have phenomenal barbecue there. They make some great bourbon there. The Bluegrass Hall of Fame is there, so they're bourbon, barbecue, and bluegrass. And there is an entire cryptozoological aspect of Owensboro because apparently Bigfoot lives nearby, and there's a whole thing with Bigfoot that's happening at GeoWoodstock this time. And
Oh,
if they weren't doing this amazing thing downtown out the riverfront, and with the great restaurants and bars and everything they have down through there, and all of the things that our hosts have planned for us, there are thousands of geocaches within an hour's drive. That and some truly amazing stuff. Like I'm almost disappointed that I've cached in the area several times because I won't get to see some of these things for the first time because there are some caches there that folks are going to be standing around the campfire, the figurative campfire at GeoWoodstock talking about because there's just so much creativity in the area.
it sounds awesome. So the big event, you got the side events and stuff, but the big event, I I've looked at the schedule online and there's still some stuff that hasn't been announced yet at this point. It's still
Always.
early on. Yeah. So
And even up until the week, there will be surprises that won't be announced until we get there.
it's I'm looking forward to that. And as you said, Owensboro is a beautiful area. And that alone is a good reason to host an event there. But why did the committee select Owensboro?
It was really on the strength of the proposal that, of course, I'd attended the MOGA there, so I had some firsthand. Several of our committee members had attended MOGA there, so had firsthand experience, and to see that they certainly the team that was putting it together could handle a GeoWoodstock sized event. The area, there's certainly sufficient hotels in the convention center. It's a wonderful area to host a large scale event. Plenty of parking, none of the headaches that you associate with some of that sort of thing. But when we look through with what the city had put together there with the Convention Visitors Bureau and with their chamber, and they're looking at their plans of what they wanted to do to show off their town and to welcome geocachers in with those side events, it was hard to look at theirs and not get excited about coming to Owensboro. And of course, that's the real heartbreak of the whole thing is that, we will often have 3 to 5 really good proposals. And you look at them, you're like, okay, so where are we going to go this year? Which of these proposals is the strongest? And often we're there like, we'll come down in between ourselves. I was trying to go like, how do you decide between 2 really good proposals? And in that case, a lot of times we will look at an area and be like, well, GeoWoodstock hasn't been held in this area. So it's a new region that we're moving into.
Okay.
So that's the thing, when you look at that, at least looking at diversity, how far is this area from somewhere that has already hosted a GeoWoodstock? Although we have absolutely traveled back. There was one in Nashville. There was the now hosted one 40 miles away in Bell Buckle. The original was in Louisville. The 10-year one was just across the river in Sellersburg, Indiana. So we don't mind returning to an area at all. But those are the kind of things that it comes down to when you're looking like, wow, these are both great proposals. There would be a great venue and great team for the geocaching community to come visit with. But we haven't had one in this general region. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, it's tough. And we are blessed to have this to have these riches to pick from. That it's not.
Yeah.
I would hate to get us to a place where we had one person bid this year. Thank goodness, knock on wood. Thank goodness we haven't been in that position yet.
So as we're recording this, deadline for submitting for the next one is March 31st, which would be tomorrow in the real recording time. Be a little will have already passed when this airs.
But GeoWoodstock 21 will be held the next year, and we'll be opening up bids for that.
Yes. So at this point, I'm guessing you have a few proposals in already.
That I've got a few in, and I can't talk about them, period, because it's always a big secret. But the funny thing is, I can't even speak to them because I literally haven't opened them. This is the week where I really start receiving stuff, and I had a couple pop up in my emails this week, and I don't open them until tomorrow afternoon. I will crack everything open, make sure that everything's complete, that the attachments are there, that everything downloads properly and all that. Mm-hmm. And on April 1st, I'll them and then put it on our website, our internal website, so the rest of the committee can take a look at these things. And I do that so I don't have pre-knowledge, so we're all looking at things with fresh eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, but we work really, really hard to make sure that we don't do anything to predispose. Like if I went through and read through them, I'm sure that I would read one, that there would be one that rose to the top for me.
Right.
And I want to make sure that like everything's always in alphabetical order, so I don't somehow by presenting this one first, make us all lean one direction, because we don't even discuss it internally until we've had an opportunity for everyone to read through all the packets.
Okay.
Then, and a lot of times we will ask questions internally back and forth, and then we'll often go back to the hosts for clarification.
Okay.
If there's something that we're not quite sure about, we'll ask about that. And we generally take 10 days for everybody to read, and then a couple of days of discussion. We take 2 weeks to decide where the next one's going to be.
So you decide pretty quick after that final deadline.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, after tomorrow night at midnight, we're not receiving any more. I mean, if it comes in on April 1st, sorry, you missed the deadline. So there's no point putting things off there. We've got the team and we're tight. We all know each other. We've talked together for several years. We're all friends. So it's not that tough. We put them out there. We all know what we're looking for. We have some really good eyes on there. Then everybody will come back with their questions and we'll go back and do a little roundtable discussion. And it generally doesn't take that long to get to a consensus. Knock on wood. So far, we've had pretty good luck because you look at things and I don't think we have ever received a bad bid. I mean, that's like I don't think we've ever seen when we like picked it up and we're like, yeah, this isn't going to fly. So we look through all of them and we sort of all use our own internal grading system and figure out what our number one choice is. And then it comes out, we do a live chat or we go back and forth in forums. It doesn't take too long to see which direction everybody's leaning.
Okay.
And as soon as we figure that out, we give it 2 weeks because also like to make sure that even if we all decided on day one, nothing's official till the end. So if you want to think about it and go back through, if you change your mind, when we come to the end, we do a final vote, tally everything up. It's all out in the open. Everybody can see who voted for what. And then we go and let the new hosts know that they are going to be hosting this year so they can get to work because there's a ton of work to be done.
It sounds like it.
And the ones that didn't make it, we let them know that they didn't make it. And generally, if there's anything, if we have any, not criticism is the wrong word, but if we have anything constructive to say about it, like we didn't award it to you this year, but we like the proposal, come back to us next year. We have questions about this, this, and this.
Okay.
To kind of see where things are going, to try to help folks go along because this event depends on the host that hosted every year. We're the committee that decides where it goes, but we don't do the work. The work is coming from the community of the folks who decide, I want to give back to the geocache community as a whole, and I'm willing to do that through GeoWoodstock. And we have all done it. We know how much work is involved in it, and we know what an honor and a privilege it is to have been a host. And we take that very seriously as we're choosing who's going to join the team for the next time.
So have you had previous applicants that weren't selected for whatever reason reapply in the following years?
Absolutely. And be selected in the following years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone. Like we want people to host it. We want people to understand, that it's a big undertaking.
Right.
I mean, it blows me away that this thing that started with Joe wanting to get at least 10 people together in Louisville has turned into an event that has thousands of people show up and literally has $500,000 budgets sometimes because of the number of people who are ordering coins and ordering t-shirts and using those porta potties and parking and having the police direct traffic and renting venues and buying insurance for those days. Like when we did ours, I was shocked at how much money we spent on having insurance just for the event.
I would have never thought about that.
There are a ton of considerations.
Once you say it, it makes sense, but it's not something that I would have thought about having to have event insurance because there's so many people there and liabilities associated with that many people just in one area.
And a lot of times the venues will cover that. I mean, that's part of the things. Like when GeoWoodstock 16 was held at Coney Island Theme Park in Cincinnati, or just outside Cincinnati, in Claremont County. But when they do it, of course, they have their riders there. We add an insurance rider over the top of what they have, but they have that sort of thing that's handled. When I hosted it, we hosted it in the town of Bellocal, Tennessee, on a piece of property that we owned that had a stage there in the middle of town. So even though we had our basic event insurance, I also purchased riders to go over the top for that day to make sure everything was covered. And we donated money to the local Boy Scouts who helped direct traffic and park cars. We donated money to GPS units and mapping to the local fire department at that, because at that back in 2009, they didn't have GPS units for the fire department. So we did a project with them where we mapped all of the fire hydrants and natural water sources in their district and then programmed all those into the GPSs and made sure they had GPSs that were programmed in every truck on their force.
That's awesome.
There are a lot of things like that. It's fun, like, even though there are huge numbers going around, like this is not about making money.
Right.
Like we're always pretty clear about that up front. Like we have to make enough money to make sure that we can pay for meals and venues and porta potties and t-shirts and all of those liabilities that you take on and when you're hosting the event.
Right.
But when we finished out, our goal was to fly as close to the ground as we could without crashing. And when we were all said and done with GeoWoodstock 7, which we hosted here in Tennessee, we took the money that was left over. We took each other, the 10 of us, out to dinner one night at a Mexican restaurant and had lots of margaritas to celebrate that we had survived it. And then figured out how to take what profits were left over there and where to allocate those. And we donated those to the fire department, to the chamber, to our local Boy Scout groups to make sure that the money that was made by the community inviting people in went back into the community to serve that community.
That's awesome. So, obviously the sales from the different swags and stuff support the
Yes.
the event. So is it the hosting committee that comes up with the designs for that, or is it taken care of some other way?
Absolutely. It is the hosting committee.
Okay.
We have a set of guidelines that they get as far as like the use of our trademark and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But outside of that, it's once again, like we try to keep our fingers off the scales. Like I want to see what the local hosts are able to put together. And it doesn't matter whether I think that's a beautiful design or a terrible design. It's their design. And it's the face that they want to put out to the world. And I don't think we've had any bad designs. But even if there was one that I looked at, and as long as it wasn't offensive in some way, I would go, hey, knock yourselves out. That's the face you want to put out to the world. Put that face on because it's their face. And that is the thing that I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I want to keep coming back to. The great thing about GeoWoodstock is that no one knows what it looks like. I've been there since the beginning, and I don't know what it looks like, and I don't know what it's supposed to look like. And thank goodness that none of us have an idea what this is really supposed to be, because if we did, then it would end up looking like that year after year, and I don't want that. And the committee doesn't want that.
It sounds, I'm going to be honest, it sounds completely overwhelming to be the host of this thing.
It is. Having been a host, I can say absolutely that it is. And we hosted, Joe worked with us on our committee because he was here. Joe passed away 7 years ago. Sorry, I always get weird. It's hard to think about him being gone.
I understand that.
It really is. He started this and he ran it and he was in control of everything. And when he passed, he talked to us. He had a plan for how things continued. And we've tried to stick to his plan and tried to honor what he had, what he wanted to have things look like. And I'm not in charge of anything. That's the thing. Let me be clear about that. I'm the spokesperson for the committee. The committee makes all the decisions. We have a 3-person executive committee. It's myself, Whimsy Guy out of North Carolina, and Paint Fiction out of Florida that Joe put together. So we would have 3 folks that if you had to have a quick answer on something to do legal things and stuff, we're the 3 guys who come together. We have to do something quick, but we try not to do anything quick. We try to make sure that everybody has a voice in the committee on anything that we do. But I'm only here talking to you because I am the voice of that committee, and I'm only the voice of that committee because Joe told me that it was my job to speak. If he couldn't, that he was at GeoWoodstock 13, his health was failing, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make the announcements that afternoon. And we were standing. He said, "I may not be able to go. If I can't go, you're going to speak for me." I'm like, "Yes, sir." There's no question. And a few weeks later, the last conversation we had, we talked about me being able to speak for him going forward. So we all take it very seriously. That the great majority of the folks that are on this committee were friends of Joe's to start with. He brought us together to start with, and we absolutely honor what he created, and we want to continue to honor that. And one of the things that Joe was a very strong believer in was the community and the diversity of the community, that the many different viewpoints are what make community. having 100 people standing around who agree about everything is a community. That's an army. You got that. That's easy. Like, that's having folks who have different viewpoints and bringing those folks to the table, making sure that all of those voices are heard. That was very important to him. That's very important to me. And I think that's what we try most to capture with the event of GeoWoodstock, is to make sure that those local voices are heard and that we are seeing something genuine and something that's real. Because when it comes down to it, if Joe were here, and God, I wish he were, he would tell you real quick that it's about getting these folks together to talk. And it doesn't matter where we do it. We can all stand around in a parking lot. We can stand around in a field. And for anyone who knew Joe, standing around in a parking lot after dinner could take hours and hours because he understood how important it was to keep everyone talking to each other. Because if we're looking at each other and we're talking to each other, we're moving forward. We may have problems, but we're working on figuring them out. We're figuring out, what are we going to do caching better in our community? What are we going to do to make our community better? What are we going to do to keep people from arguing about things? You know, that was another big thing that he used to get frustrated with the forums, because a lot of folks get real kind of snippy when they get behind a keyboard, and
Yeah.
you hear those, you get those fingers clicking real hard. And it's easy to say really hurtful things, but it's a lot harder to do that when you're sitting across a table or standing across a truck bed or standing out in the field talking to folks. And that, to me, is what GeoWoodstock is all about. To me, that's one of the big things, that when you get everybody together, when you're sitting across a table from one another, if you're leaning on a truck bed and looking across that truck, or you're just standing out in the field, it gets really hard to not see the humanity in the other person, to not see them as a real person, and to not talk to them about real things. It's pretty rare to say something mean to somebody's face, because they're real. Behind a keyboard, they're just a name and that sort of thing. And that one of the big things, the reason he put this together in the first place, was to take those 10 names that he kept seeing in logs and that he kept seeing on the forums and put faces with the names. And that is the beauty of the first event. And when we someday get there, that will be the beauty of the last event. That folks who haven't ever seen each other before will meet new friends. That folks who haven't seen each other in years will come back together, and there will be hugs and rejoicing because we're together again. GeoWoodstock 18 in British Columbia. That team, I have to give them a shout out. I love all of our hosts, but they held the ball there for 3 years because COVID shut down the world for us, and we weren't having mega events. And when we got back there, especially on the other side of the country, but on the other side in a different country, there were so many people and after spending 2 years of staying 6 feet apart with our masks on and that sort of thing, to see folks that I haven't seen in 2 years, and to have those hugs and that fellowship, and to feel the relief of knowing that we were on the other side and that we could see each other once again. Truly amazing feeling, practically spiritual. And who could have thought we could have this amazing, just truly amazing homecoming? Because one afternoon, Joe decided he wanted to meet those folks behind the computer screen, that he wanted to see who it was that was signing those logs in front of him. And he brought everybody together in a little park under a bridge in Louisville, Kentucky. And having done that, so you know what? This community thinks pretty good. Let's keep it going.
And here we are.
Here we are.
20 years later.
GeoWoodstock 19 coming up this Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to be looking at bids tomorrow for GeoWoodstock 20. 20 years. That's my wife and I recently celebrated 20 years of marriage, and as we said to each other, 20 years is a long time to do something, even if you like it.
That's true. That's true for it, no matter what it is.
No matter what it is. It's hard to eat ice cream for 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, it's just amazing to see these big yearly events keep going.
It truly is. And I look forward to this so much. When I sit down and start planning my travel schedule, I'm like, okay, I know I have to be in Waukegan, Ohio this weekend. I know I have to be in Rome, Georgia this weekend. I know I've got to be in Owensboro this weekend, and then trying to see which other ones I can fit in. It is amazing though how many of these the mega events get the credit and everything, but there are a ton of regional events. And if there's not a mega event that's in your area, go to one of these bigger regional events. Go to the big picnics that are things that are put together by the state organizations and things. And just get out and meet more people, because at the end of the day, yeah, we want to go find caches. We want to sign those logs. We want to share that with our family and with our friends. But one really wonderful way of expanding your family and your group of friends is by going to one of these events, hanging around, talking to people about something that you love. We all love geocaching. Maybe go out, find a cache with them, have a drink afterwards, go grab a meal with somebody, and help build that community. I know that my immediate family has been enhanced by the chosen family of geocachers that has joined us over the last 20 years. And when my son was born, there were geocachers who were hanging out in the hallway waiting to meet him.
Oh,
Because
that's awesome.
that's how family goes. We have a group that gets together every Thursday night. Joe started that as well. And on every Thursday night, we get together and we eat dinner and just hardly ever talk about caching anymore. We talk about our families and how our weeks have gone and everything, because that's what community is about being a support group for each other.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm looking forward to GeoWoodstock. I know it's going to be an amazing event, and I can't wait to see what it's all about when we get down there and check it out.
It's going to be wonderful. It always is. I don't know everything they have planned, but just the things I know off the top of my head, I can't wait to see some of the stuff that they're doing. And I can't wait to do what we've been talking about. Instead of seeing you across a computer screen, I cannot wait to meet you in person.
I hope I get to meet you. There's a couple people that I have met because of this podcast that I have managed to stay in touch with, that they live halfway across the country. So I've never met them in person, that are planning to be there at GeoWoodstock. I'm looking forward to actually getting to meet people in person.
Well, absolutely. We will make sure to make it happen, because I'll be there all day looking around. And if you can't find me anywhere else, at the end of the day, I'll be up on stage somewhere announcing where GeoWoodstock 20 will be held next year.
Yes. And I look forward to hearing where that amazing event will be next year as well. And on that note, I can't think of a better way to wrap up that conversation, but you have a cache highlight for us that I looked this up and I saw the pictures, and this looks amazing.
Thank you.
It's Geocache GC4JWPY, and it's called, correct me if I get the name of this wrong, because I didn't have the foresight to write the name down. You can't stop the signal.
Can't stop the signal.
Can't stop the signal. So tell us about this geocache.
Well, Can't Stop the Signal is, of course, a nod to our good friend Signal the Frog, and with a little tip of the hat to Firefly, because you can't stop the signal, Mal. This is one of those crazy things that actually, when we hosted GeoWoodstock 7, I keep a notebook with me all the time, and I'm always just, making little notes here, little notes there, like, this would be cool. I put this together for GeoWoodstock 7 and then never got around to actually building it. And a couple of years later, I was flipping through the book looking for something about GeoWoodstock, and the literal cocktail napkin that this one started as fell out of the book. And I thought, you know what, I should get back and do that. So Can't Stop the Signal is a squared off sort of 8-bit representation of Signal the Frog that's a little over 6 feet tall, built entirely out of ammo cans. There are 19 ammo cans used in the construction, from 30 caliber ammo cans for the legs and arms, and his satchel, a 30 cal. There's a 50 caliber, one of the large 50 cals for his head. And then there are two of the huge, they were a Vulcan cannon ammo can. I don't remember what the number is on them, for the torso. And a stainless steel bolt for his head. When I first started to put this together, I talked to Joe about it, and he suggested that I not try to weld it because ammo cans are notoriously hard to weld. I didn't listen, and I failed. I burned through several ammo cans trying to figure out the work. So Signal has a stainless steel all-thread endoskeleton holding all of those pieces together.
Oh, wow.
And because he's big, like it's no if you take a look on the cache page, the gallery's full of spoilers. He's actually located right outside my office, right outside my office door, so folks can slip in here. And every once in a while, people realize that this is actually where I am every day, so they do pop in to say hello. Other times they just like sneak in and out and go see him. But we've got a monster Signal the Frog sitting out there holding a gift ammo can that has a log in there. It's been awarded 5 bugs or 5 stars by the Travel Bug Hotels of America. It's gotten several. We're thankful it's gotten several favorite points, and just a little something fun for something fun for the kids.
The gallery, like there's, it is so neat looking. It is just right there. It just looks like an open area, and it is just right there. And I don't think you could miss it driving up. You may not know what it is if you don't geocache, but I imagine it gets a lot of people
500 feet away.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Like I can't imagine. How long did it take you to build that?
Building it was fairly quick. Built it over
Really?
the course of a weekend. The problem was painting it,
Oh,
because
okay.
when I decided I was trying to get the whole thing together, I laid out the paint, and it rained for nearly 2 weeks. So I had it
No.
in my studio, and I would put paint on, and then it would take forever to dry. And I was trying to do a technique where it's all spray paint, but it's got several layers of glitter and things on there to give it a little depth, a little iridescence. And it was taking between like 2 days between coats of paint for it to dry. So it took me about 2 weeks to get it painted after a weekend of building.
Wow, just too much humidity. It wouldn't set up, huh?
Yeah, yeah, just poor time. And if I had just been patient, wait, I could have painted the whole thing in 2 days. But not huge on patience. But as you can see from that one, and from most of the other things that I've hidden, and most of the things I don't do things small very often. Tend to be a bit over the top. I'm sure there are a ton of folks listening to your podcast now going like, "Wow, Brad's pretty chill tonight. He's usually way more extra." But we'll see you at GeoWoodstock, and you'll see. I've been described as exuberant.
I love it. That's great. Well, that cache you built is amazing, and I'm gonna add a picture to it to the show notes so people can click over there and check it out. It is I have yet to see anything else like this in a geocache. It's pretty amazing. And where did you get all the ammo cans from? Was there like an army surplus store nearby that you were able to go pick these all up from, or where'd you find them?
I'm not even embarrassed to admit that I generally keep a ton of ammo cans around, because I like to hide. I like to hide stuff on trails and stuff, and I like to have them there. So, at one point, I bought a couple of pallets of surplus cans, and of course, our group, like we all, just going to pass around. That was Joe and Bob and I. Originally, instead of ammo cans for legs, we were going to do the missile tubes, because I had a bunch of those left over, but the missile tubes didn't work out particularly well for legs. They weren't as stable as I'd hoped. But
Okay.
we would run into an Army Navy surplus store and see that they had a bunch of missile tubes, so we would just buy all of them if it was a decent deal, and then figure out. When we're geocachers, there's always somebody who needs an ammo can. Matter of fact, at GeoWoodstock too, I believe Joe gave away a pallet of ammo cans there. If not, it was at another event he did at that same location that he would just bring.
Wow.
We'd buy a bunch of them and he would give them out, because by giving them away, suddenly there were 50, 60, 80 new ammo cans hidden in our general area.
That's awesome.
That's more
That's a
stuff for us
great
to hunt.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot better than a bunch of micros, in my opinion.
Well, and in our experience, if you look around and look at like some of the auction sites and things, you can often buy a pallet of ammo cans for the price of 4 or 5 at a store.
Oh, wow.
I know that I've bought pallets for less than $100. Sometimes they're in terrible shape and you have to clean them up, or just have rusted through ammo cans, but they're always good to have handy. And we use them around the farm. The toolbox on the tractor is an ammo can, a 30 caliber ammo can that we drilled through the fender. So always handy.
Can't go wrong with the ammo can.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on here with me today and telling us all about GeoWoodstock and its history and doing the cache highlight for us. It's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to do that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to meet you at GeoWoodstock and to have all your visitors come join us in Owensboro this year.
You've been listening to Geocache Adventures with me, Shadow Dragon 1. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or go to geocacheadventures.org and you can find the information on the contact page. Theme music is by The Travel Bugs. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have you heard of FTF Magazine? It's the magazine for geocachers. It is full of articles and pictures, all submitted by geocachers just like you. I'm a subscriber myself, and I love it. My favorite part is the little snippets on the edges of the articles on all the different pages. Those are my favorites. Just go to ftfgeo.com to check them out and tell them Shadow Dragon 1 sent you.